A more general barrier to maintaining or achieving property status was the illegalization of literacy.
And so what are we talking about? We're talking about the Irish Catholic and Negro parallels of being prevented from reading and becoming educated, and basically being blocked off legally from progressing within the society. And so let's keep going further into the book here, The Invention of the White Race by Theodore Allen, and see if we can get some understanding.
Even before the formal inauguration of the penal law system, a 1692 law made it a crime for a Catholic to go abroad to be educated.
I couldn't find the 1692 law, but here's what the penal law of 1695 says. It says, in case any of His Majesty's subjects of Ireland shall go or send any child or other person beyond the seas to be trained in any popish university, college, or school that's dealing with Catholicism, or any private popish family, or shall send any money for the support of any such person, then the person sending and the person sent, both of them, upon conviction, meaning when they get caught and found guilty, be disabled to prosecute any action in court of law, or be a guardian or executor, or receive any legacy or gift, or bear any public office, and shall forfeit all their land and estates during their lives. And this is the part here that the English really want. They want the land. They want the land and the buildings on top of it. That's what they want. And so there's also a penal law in 1695 that states explicitly that any practicing Catholic or of the popish religion was not allowed to teach the youth in any schools. And so here's what this law says exactly. It says this: whereas it has been found by experience that tolerating at papist keeping schools or instructing youth in literature is one great reason of many of the natives continuing ignorant of the principles of the true religion, and strangers to the scriptures, and of their neglecting to conform themselves to the laws of this realm, and of their not using the English habit and language, no person of the popish religion shall publicly teach school or instruct youth, or in private houses teach youth, except only the children of the master or mistress of the private house, upon pain of £20 and prison for 3 months for every such offense. And so this is just one example of how the English used religion as a tool to dominate people. And because the Catholics didn't want to conform or accept what the Protestants thought to be the true religion, the English, they made it illegal for them to teach the youth.
In its final version, the penalty for Catholics who ventured to teach the youth was increased from 3 months in jail and a £20 fine to perpetual imprisonment and complete forfeiture of property, that being the punishment prescribed for unlicensed Catholic clergy.
They upped it from 3 months in jail to life in prison, and they had to give all the property that they owned. And so the English elite, they loved finding ways to take property, right? And they did anything that they could to get it, right? So this stuff is wild, man. So let's go ahead and get some more.
Protestants who employed Catholics as even assistant teachers were subject to a £10 fine for each offense. In like spirit, Catholics were by law strictly excluded from some apprenticeships. Even Catholic masters were discriminated against as to the number and terms of the apprentices they could employ. The most prevalent form of discrimination was by local custom and regulation. At present, said an observer writing in 1724, there is not one freeman or master of any corporation of the Roman Catholic religion in all the kingdom, Ireland. Lecky adds the comment, in the most Catholic parts of Ireland, many of the most lucrative trades were long a strict monopoly of the Protestants, who refused to admit any Catholic as an apprentice.
Here goes the Protestants blocking off the money from the Catholics, but from the Protestants' viewpoint, I could see and completely understand the approach and the strategy behind it. And obviously from the Catholics' view, this would not appear to be a good position to be in.
In the last quarter of the 18th century, Arthur Young found the Catholic Irish under such discouragements that they could not engage in any trade which requires both capital and industry. Every means is taken to reduce and keep them in a state of poverty.
Every means was taken to drag them down into the pit of poverty. That's what he's talking about. And remember what this is demonstrating. It's demonstrating how the Negro situation in early America has parallels with the Irish. And so obviously it's not going to be the exact same in many instances because the circumstances and the settings were different, right? And that requires a different strategy of domination. But there were still parallels because every tactic need not be reinvented, right? But let's go ahead and see how the law was enacted to deal with the education of the Negroes.
Sooner or later, laws were enacted in the Anglo-American South to forbid the teaching of reading and writing to African American bond laborers on the grounds that it unsuited them for slavery.
Slaves weren't supposed to be reading, right? Because it would have imparted new data points in their mind, right? Reading new information, it had the possibility to carry their imagination further than the setting and the circumstance of plantation life and being a slave, right? And so the strategy was to keep them as ignorant as possible and for as long as possible, which obviously it was in the best interest of those holding them as slave property.
In Virginia, in 1832, after Nat Turner's rebellion, it was made a crime to teach a free African American to read and write.
Uh-oh.
The same law forbade the return to Virginia of African Americans who went north to be educated.
If they went to receive education from the North, then they needed to plan on staying there or going somewhere else other than Virginia, because they were not welcomed back there.
The Protestant ascendancy had acted in a similar vein in Ireland by passing a law taking away all civil rights from any Catholic Irish person who went abroad for an education. With regard to the trades, African Americans were confronted with the same sort of exclusion by law and customary discrimination as was faced by the Catholics in Ireland. In the 1690s, Protestant porters in Dublin and white porters in New York City were petitioning the authorities against allowing the employment of Papists and Negroes respectively in that trade. Under the heading Concerted Action by a White Workman Against Negro Artisans, Professor Morris cited from the record of the 18th and early 19th centuries more than a dozen such instances involving white racist appeals for legislative prohibitions against free or bond African American workers in non-agricultural labor. A study made in Philadelphia in 1821 found that on account of racial discrimination, free African Americans were excluded from most of the respectable and profitable employments of life, confined to the humblest and least gainful occupations.
Again, trying to keep people in the pit and trying to make sure that they don't rise above them.
Frederick Douglass relates his personal experience with this sort of white exclusionism both as a bondman in Baltimore and as a free person in New Bedford.
This stuff was real life for people living at those times, man. I can only imagine what people like Frederick Douglass went through for us to get where we're at today. And today is the time in existence to climb completely out of the pit and into the free world where life is much better and it makes more sense, right? And so this is the end of part 5 commentary on the book here, The Invention of the White Race. This is volume 1 by Theodore Allen. And so I want to thank you for watching all the way into the end. My name is Brooklyn St. Michael, and I'll see you on the other side.